The night may be long and the dark may be deep, but the answers are there to be found. Whether it's the normal, the abnormal, or the paranormal, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond reality.
Welcome to the program, everyone. We're starting off another week here. Looking forward to some great shows this week. And I'm just trying to figure out my volume is a little bit off here. See, gremlins come into the studio and they do things, and then I have to make adjustments. And when I say gremlins, I mean the Friday night program, Booze, Brews, and Bros, where all things are on the table. Anyway, welcome to the show. Sounds better now. So we have a great show lined up for you tonight. Ronald Meyer is returning guest. We're going to talk about his evidence and the books and movies he's created that relate to this idea that Bigfoot and alien phenomena are somehow connected. In fact, they might be directly connected. And Ronald will be talking about that. Again, he's put a movie together about this. He's written about it, and it's going to be a good conversation. We're going to get right to this. We're going to get our guest on the line. Again, tonight we're talking with Ronald Meyer, and we're talking about the Bigfoot alien connection tonight on the program. It's Beyond Reality, and we'll be right back.
Please support the program. Go to patreon.com/Johhaw. That's Johhaw.
Welcome back to the show. As I said, tonight we've got a great topic with a returning guest. Ronald Meyer has been on the show before. We're going to be talking about the relationships between paranormal, UFO, and Bigfoot contact experiences. Ronald, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here again.
Good to be back. I think it was a normal world the last time we talked in October.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I think you're absolutely right. And it's amazing how quickly things can change, right?
My God.
It's like a few short months ago, we kind of, we're living the good life, it seems. And all of a sudden, not only do we have this pandemic, which has changed the way we do everything, but then we've got some real strife and stresses around the country that we haven't seen in many, many years. And we're all kind of sheltered in place, hoping that it all goes away, I think.
Well, I'm certainly ready for it to go away. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely am too. So what have you been up to since you've been on the show other than sheltering in place? Anything good going on?
Well, I think when we talked last, I was working on a movie called The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. Is that correct? Do you remember something like that?
I absolutely do. Absolutely.
Feature film. Well, we finished it, and it came out in mid-March on Amazon Prime.
Well, congratulations. That's great. That's great news.
It's done reasonably well. I got the report from the distributor for the months of April and May, and of course the virus has probably helped these numbers. But make a guess as to how many people you think might have watched it in 2 months.
Oh, man, I have no idea. I wouldn't even dare guess. Just go ahead and give me the numbers.
Oh, give me a guess. Come on.
In 2 months?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. 3,000 people.
220,000.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Would you like those numbers for your show?
I would love those. Yeah, I'll take those. I'll take them over the course of 6 months. That's terrific. Congratulations. What do you think draws people to it, particularly on something like Amazon Prime? Do you think, I don't know, what is it a curiosity that drives people to it, or do you think people are kind of scrolling by and say, oh, wow, this looks interesting, let me check it out? What do you think draws them?
Well, first of all, when success builds on Amazon, they have these robots that send, this is something you should watch to people who are customers, right? They drive people to the site.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I would say if you look at the reviews, they're equally divided pretty much between it's the greatest thing since mother's milk or the worst thing since, I don't know what, since Trump was elected.
Right.
So, and I think that bodes well for the fact that Amazon sees it. If they were all positive reviews, they would think it was sort of something that was manufactured by the producer or me,
Right.
getting all my friends and relatives to
Sure.
write positive reviews. But since it's evenly distributed between 5 stars and 1 star, and then in the middle are a few 4, 3, and 2. So I don't know what that says. It says that people are either ready for this or for multiple groups of people, this just isn't something that they can take in. I mean, there's going to be people out there, a good portion of them, who don't believe anything paranormal, I would say. There are people that don't believe anything alien, and there are certainly people that, think Bigfoot is some sort of hoax. And then within the Bigfoot community, there is a sharp divide between the flesh and blood hunters of Bigfoot, which is probably still the largest cohort there.
Right.
And then there's a growing community of people, for a variety of reasons, have shifted over to something that can't be flesh and blood. So what is it? Well, it's something that's paranormal, paraphysical, alien in nature. Can't quite say what, but let's find out. So to get that many positive reviews is a sign that there's a shift going on.
Do you think that some of the negative reviews come from people who just disagree with the conclusions that you're drawing? Or I mean, I'm trying to figure out why people would be negative for somebody who's presenting an idea, a concept.
Well, a lot of people that write these things just like to, I think, to hammer stuff. It's in their nature.
That's what they like to do.
There's
Right?
certain percentage of people that just like to shout at something they don't like. They get a little whiff of something that doesn't settle with them, and that's the basis for rejecting the whole thing, which is probably the most common form of rejection. Like, if you listen carefully, I say there's a creature that shows up that looks like a moth, a fairy moth, and I explain that this could not be normal. It's the brightest thing in the field that we are shooting. The sun is coming the other way, so there's no way it could light up that bright. And I say, well, it's a mystery, but it's and I didn't do a CGI on it, so I'm convinced that it's something paranormal, that it just could not be that lit up with being a simple moth. But a lot of people don't listen and say, oh, that doesn't look like anything but a moth, so the whole thing is wrong. That's one type of reaction to it. And then, of course, some of the people who belong to the hairy beast in the woods are just putting it down because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, in a way, I've done so many productions and I've seen so many reviews. I mean, sometimes you can see that they completely got the whole point, missed the point, said I missed the point, and at the same time, that was the point. I mean, some of these people just aren't very bright, I think. Got nothing better to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing we've all learned from doing any kind of work on social media or any of these digital platforms is that people can hide behind a keyboard and a computer screen and be nasty to people where they wouldn't do that in if they were face to face. They just something about that changes them a little bit.
Yeah, that's the problem with social media. There are a lot of concerns about the existential threat of social media, as a form of growing into a form of artificial intelligence that's analog and has no code, has no programming, doing its own thing. But that's another topic.
That is a completely different topic. And I know we've talked about some of these things when you were on the program last, but how did you get into the Bigfoot category? What captured your attention that made you want to work on this?
Well, a job offer. It was that simple.
Okay.
I was hired to produce a 5-part series on the Bigfoot phenomena, which is, quite large. Most people know something about it. When you say, it's like, oh, I never heard of Bigfoot. I don't think you'd ever get that reaction anymore.
No, everybody's got some familiarity with it, sure.
And it's been a really successful advertising tool, if you think about it. There's the Sasquatch this,
Yeah.
there's food associated with it. If you ride around in certain areas of the country, there's the Sasquatch Outpost, there's the Sasquatch Ski Center, so it's quite a big phenomenon. So my job was really to look at the whole big picture, how it got started, do a lot of interviews with people who had contact experiences, see if I could figure out if they were making this stuff up or they had real experiences. And I came to the conclusion that, they had these experiences. They weren't making it up. They weren't lying. You could see that a lot of them, fell into a state of almost trembling sometimes. And a number of them thought they were quite spiritual and transformational and the whole gamut of responses. So that was part of the show. I did and it's become something of like bird watching.
Mm-hmm.
You get a group of people together, and you go out into the wilds and you look for birds, right? You talk about them, and you walk down trails and you spot them, and
right.
There's somebody leading the group and tells a story about a bobolink, and so there's a lot of that. You'd be surprised that you could probably in your neighborhood go and Google, maybe not so much now, but 8 months ago you could have Googled, go on a Bigfoot walk, and you'd get some responses that would say, yeah, sign up here. And people take these walks in the woods and look for Bigfoot.
Sure.
And so it becomes sort of nothing else. It's a nature walk, a way to get out. And I went to this, it's called the Bigfoot Adventure Weekend in Ohio, where families and people come together and they camp out and they go on night ops, and it was pretty fascinating. In fact, my daughter and one of the people who was running the thing got married, and moved to Colorado, and now they're doing one in Colorado coming up on the 7th of August. So things spiral. But at a certain point, I interviewed a guy named Jim Myers, and because I wanted to get a sampling of what are called Bigfoot researchers. There's a whole community of people that fall into the category of, well, they're researchers. They think they're investigating. They go out and take reports. They set up trail cams. They do all sorts of things to try and ferret out what the Bigfoot is in a lot of different ways. And they form organizations and have meetings and go out together. And a lot of them have experiences, I found, when they do that. Usually not by hunting them down, but quite surprisingly what shows up. So anyhow, one of the experts was this guy, Jim Myers, and as I was talking to him, he said, I have a different point of view on this. I don't think, that they're a hairy beast. A lot of people who were in the Bigfoot community, they've gone out hunting them for years, and nothing has happened, and they've had experiences, and people talk to them, and the Bigfoot doesn't seem to be that hairy beast. They seem to have this other characteristic that's paraphysical. And so I was like, whoa, that's interesting. That's very interesting to me as a possibility, because I come to the conclusion that it's just not possible that some sort of ape or lost early human relative would be running around in so many places all over the world. Didn't make any sense. So I decided to write a book and play with the idea of Bigfoot called Bigfoot Singularity, that Bigfoot was an alien creature and that they were here to learn. And then I created a thriller content around it. But I wasn't satisfied, so I said I gotta look more into this. And since I had all this research, I decided to to make a movie about the paraphysical nature of Bigfoot. How's that?
I think
Can I
that
bring you up to speed?
Yeah, I think that does a great job with that. When you started the project, though, did you have a preconceived notion, if you will, and were you originally entering your Bigfoot universe thinking that Bigfoot was a flesh and blood creature? Is that where you started?
No, I never believed that.
You never did. Okay, you never did.
Didn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think
just a superficial look at it. I mean, you don't know. I think that was just where I was coming from. It didn't make any sense. So I was interested to see what it was all about. So,
I think the biggest problem most people have with any of this is the lack of any significant physical evidence. People will show you casts of footprints or photographs of footprints, clumps of hair, broken tree limbs, broken tree trunks, audio recordings, but yet we still can't find bones. We still can't find a corpse. We still can't find anything that would put us over that edge, which makes a flesh and blood physical creature difficult to accept, I would say.
Yeah. One of the first things that was sort of interesting to me is that people have found footprints, they're not uncommon.
Right.
And they make plaster Paris casts of them. And the unique thing about them is that there may be 4 or 5 footprints, and then that's it.
Right. There's not a complete trail. They don't start and end. Well, they do start and end, but they don't take you from a beginning to an end point where you find the creature or evidence of the creature. There's just a few footprints and they're gone.
Yeah. As if they just dropped out of the heaven, showed themselves to somebody, and then popped back into the heavens.
And this also...
Which is,
go ahead.
Which is, a pretty typical account from a lot of people, that they see them, they hear them, for a short period of time, and then it's gone. And they go look, and maybe they'll find footprints, maybe not. But the hard evidence is pretty slight, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, and the other groups of folks will say, well, it's not necessarily an alien connection, it's an interdimensional being. This is a whole another side to this conversation that tries to explain some of the phenomena that we just outlined.
Yeah. So you separate out kind of the interdimensional, paraphysical from the hardcore craft alien type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one of the subgroups of that I encounter doing the movie is that there are people that think that alien contact is more common in some sort of almost like telepathic contact. That it's not in the form of a craft. It's some other connection with some people that a lot of the reports of lights coming down and seem to have more that paraphysical quality rather than there's a craft, which is a fair assessment of some of the sightings, but that by and large most of the supposed alien contacts, which I think are real, are more of the nature of some sort of direct communication that's, like you say, could be interdimensional. I'm beginning to understand a little bit about what that could mean. That's basically the reality that lies beyond our senses that can show up at times for us as little portals into a greater reality. Anyhow.
Yeah, we've had enough folks on this program talking about their personal paranormal experiences, whether it is a Bigfoot encounter or in many cases, it could be a Bigfoot encounter and then a UFO or an alien encounter. So anecdotally, I have noticed this connection for quite some time. But you must have a little more hard numbers or more solid statistics as to how common someone encountering a Bigfoot type exposure is with someone, that same person having some type of alien or UFO activity occur within a proximity or a very short period of time. Any sense of how common that is, and do you have any hard numbers on that?
No, I don't have any hard numbers. That's one of the areas that's crying out for research, is to gather this information and put it together. Like you said, there are a lot of stories, anecdotes of that occurring. But it hasn't been collated and put in any form that you could look at it in a normal statistical manner, unfortunately. Be nice if it was.
But you probably have encountered the same type of anecdotal information that makes you obviously you've done a lot of research on the connection to begin with, but you've heard enough of these stories and people telling you these stories that you must feel pretty good about the path you've taken.
Yeah, I mean, did you look at the movie?
I did not get a chance to see the film yet. I intend to watch it actually tonight after our discussion.
Well, just to give you one example, you're familiar with Finding Bigfoot, the Animal Planet series that ran for a long time?
Yep.
Remember Bobo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the investigators. He was quite fat in the series, but now he's quite thin.
Mm-hmm.
So I did an interview with him, and he came clean and said, yeah, that we, not only I personally, but the crew encountered multiple cases of Bigfoot associated with other paranormal phenomena that could be interpreted as orbs or other kinds of alien artifacts or phenomena. And he describes one of them in the movie where the whole crew was sitting on the edge of a wooded area, and they could hear like a Bigfoot chomping through the woods, and saw an orb, like it was holding an orb in its hand as it walked along.
Oh, wow.
And there's a Bible for doing TV series that makes you stick to a certain way of doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever try to write for a television series, to give you the Bible, and this is with this character, and you don't deviate from what the show is always going to be. And that series that ran for a long time, in no way could they ever mention that Bigfoot might be something other than a hairy beast, no matter what they discovered. And of course, they couldn't find the Bigfoot, because that would put an end to the series.
Exactly. Kind of a paradox there. We're talking tonight with Ronald Meyer. When did the film come out? It was rather recently, wasn't it? A couple months ago?
Yeah, it came out in early March.
But your book has been out longer, because we talked about the book last time you were on, Bigfoot Singularity.
Yeah, the book's been out since November. Now, if I had the number of book sales that I at $10 a pop for every person that saw the movie, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be on some island or something.
Yeah.
I'd be quite rich and famous.
So as the film came out and people started to watch it in some great numbers, you must have started to get people contacting you with their personal stories. Did you see a lot of these responses from people seeing the film where they had to share their story?
Well, I don't let people contact me that way. I don't have any social media presence in that way, by choice.
Yeah. Probably smart.
Too many nutcases out there.
Yeah. Especially when we get into some of these fringe topics, there seems to be an abundance. But
if people work hard enough because I do have a media presence. I've been around a long time and have a company, that's a production company.
Sure.
So a few people have worked hard and ferreted me out and found my work email number, address, and sent me some interesting letters, all positive about how this explained experiences for them and what a relief it was to. So, if you take the time to do all that to tell somebody, they're not going to tell me I'm full of shit, I don't think.
You, Ron, are quite active in fossil collecting, I understand. Tell us a little bit about that and about that part of your life.
Yes, I've been interested in collecting fossils since I was a teenager. Something fascinating about these creatures that lived a long time ago. I'm actually quite famous. There are these sites that are known as Lagerstätten, mother lodes.
Mm-hmm.
They are sites that preserve soft tissue, which is, if you think about it, most things. Well, for example, when you find a dinosaur, you don't find its skin or its gut, or if you do, it's really a rare event, and very exciting. Or if you think about all the insects and animals and that have soft tissue and no hard parts. So mostly it's hard parts that are preserved: bones, shells, exoskeletons of things like crabs. And so rarely do you ever get a complete picture of the ecosystem or biota that existed a long time ago. And so at a certain point, I got tired of collecting just a fossil here and there. I went looking for what you'd call Lagerstätten, and there are probably 25 of them, and so far my friend and I have found 2 of them. One in the Solarian, which is an early, and then another one in the Ordovician, which we're working right now in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
When you find a fossil that actually has soft tissue intact, how do you recover it?
Well, first of all, you have to think that the circumstances in which this was preserved had to happen very suddenly. Something had to bury whatever it is really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that occurred, there was no possibility of, the normal bacteria destroying it or something eating it, scavenging. I mean, they've done examples of, let's say, jellyfish, which are all soft tissue. You know what a jellyfish is, right?
Sure, yeah.
So they've done experiments where they have a jellyfish pass away on the beach, and they photograph it in a matter of less than a day. Something like 80% of information about what creature it was when it started out is gone. So one of the things that we found in the Ordovician site in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan are hundreds of jellyfish preserved, which tells you how extraordinary it is. And so often what you have to do is find they're contained in a very narrow layer. And you got to find a way to work that layer. In this particular case, the Ordovician site, they're all slightly different. The Solarian one, which we found in Waukesha, Wisconsin, we had to bring the rock back, the layer, freeze and thaw it for multiple times, take a fillet knife and separate the partings, and then quickly back it so that the rock would deteriorate. And then in the one that we are collecting now in the Upper Peninsula, they're in these things called pops, which I had noticed in another Lagerstätten in Montana where they preserve early sharks. And you pull up a pop, and in it would be a creature. And there, it could either be a hard connection, or it could be another situation where there's a bunch of layers and you split the layers carefully. You got to do it in the field. And we've found, a nuke. The first time they ever found this creature called, well, it's got a funny name, but it's related to horseshoe crabs. And there's another one there called Euryptids. And then there's the one we found, which was described for the first time. And we found the actual carapace of the animal that lived 423 million years ago. So it's like finding the shell of a lobster.
It's amazing.
Totally preserved.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm reminded of some of those insect finds, things that have been caught in amber, which seals them immediately and preserves them. But that's not what you're talking about here.
This is way older than that. There weren't any trees. There wasn't anything on the land.
Yeah.
These creatures became. And Chasmataspadiddle is the name of the creature. For some reason, it's a terrible name given to it. But we co-authored a paper with two PhDs, one at Yale and one at West Virginia, and we were able to describe them for the first time completely. And that had never been done before. I've only known from little pieces throughout the record. And it's quite possible that they're the forerunners of one of our favorite kind of creatures, arachnids.
Not everybody's favorite, I'll tell you that.
If you love spiders, ticks,
our chat room often takes up the topic of spiders. There are a lot of folks that do not want anything to do with spiders. Let's talk a little bit more about what you've found that you've put in the book and you've put in your movie in terms of evidence that connects Bigfoot with an alien origination.
So it goes back in a way. I did a series on sacred places a number of years ago, and where there are certain places that have, if you go there, you get a certain feeling, certain things happen. I experienced that myself in a few places. Some of them are Christian, some of them are Native American, some are geological, where you might say paranormal things happen. People have conversions. And I was quite fascinated about the idea that there were these places that were like this. Have you ever been to one of them?
No.
Like, for example, in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming, up around 8,000 feet, you have to drive way up to the top. There's this medicine wheel that nobody knows quite what its origin is. That was obviously done by the Native Americans before they were white people. And I moved into an altered state when I went up there. I went up by myself early in spring. So there are sites like that. There's famous healing spots, Chamayo in New Mexico. They're around. If you Google it, you'll find there are lots of them, actually.
Okay.
So what I moved on to beyond Bigfoot per se was the idea that like you said, they were showing up in conjunction with other, let's say, non-human activity, such as UFOs or aliens in some way, and that they were these, what I've come to know, are paranormal hotspots. And so I made it kind of a focus of the movie, because there's one very famous one, right, in New Mexico, Dulce, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
There are two places where that are reported. One is in Pennsylvania, still being studied, and then Dulce, New Mexico, where there was that strong connection between Bigfoot and UFOs. Do you know anything about Dulce? Should I talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about it, because I know a little bit, but I'm sure our audience needs some background too.
In the 70s, there's a mountain that's to the south. It's in an Apache reservation. So you can't just run around. You have to find somebody to sponsor you if you want to do anything there. But on the north side of a river is this thing called Archuleta Mountain, and it was claimed by some people that there was an alien base in the mountain, and that there was some connection with the base with the U.S. military, and at one point there was an alien battle between the military, which, is highly disputed. But the idea that there are these subterranean alien bases is a kind of a common, a well-known thing that people talk about as the world's connected by all these alien bases and portals that spring up, and they're all over the country, and they've been mapped out, and they're somehow detected by magnetic disruptions. Have you heard of that theory?
Yeah, I have. I've heard a bunch about of that in the caverns that connect throughout the world, and yeah.
So that all kind of originated there in Dulce, and then there were a lot of reports that were coming out of Dulce in the following years about spotting, UFO craft, lights that lit up the whole valley or town. Bigfoot sightings, pretty common. Many orbs spotted by people. And, it continues to this day. So I thought, well, let's go down there and see what we could find. And we found a guy who was a policeman on the reservation for a while, and his son, and they became infatuated with Bigfoot. They had probably the most typical Bigfoot experience that people have, is that there's a felt sense of a presence watching you and moving with you, but you can't see it, and sometimes you can smell it, and sometimes you can hear it, but it's really a profound sense that you're being eyeballed by something that's not human, which is, kind of a disturbing quality for some people. Others, it's kind of fascinating. So both the father and son had that experience, and they became quite interested in trying to research and find. They found a good footprint, I guess. They made a cast of it. You'll see it in the movie. And they took us on your typical Bigfoot hunt, which ended up, like most Bigfoot hunts, nothing happening particularly. Right. But the son, one of the typical things you do in a Bigfoot walk is you grab a stick and you wrap a tree. It's called a wood knot.
Yep.
And if things are going well for you, you'll get a reply. And we got that once when we were filming the earlier series. But then the son, he could duplicate a wood knot perfectly with his mouth. And another one of the unusual characteristic of Bigfoot that's reported is their vocalizations. There's Ron Moorhead recorded a whole bunch of these things. You can look it up on the internet. And it's amazing the sounds are recorded. It's been analyzed by linguists. They say it's some sort of language. The octave range is beyond anything that's human or any other animal. And a lot of what people experience are vocalizations of Bigfoot. So, and then even some people report that they'll talk to you in the language of somebody like your wife and play games with you with their mimicry of voices. So it occurred to me that if they are replying, they're not grabbing a stick, they're just doing a vocalization to make people happy. So where was I? Oh, we're at Dulce. I tried to I talked to a lot of Native people there. They asked them about their experiences, and they all had some. Even the sheriff's wife, ex-cop's wife, had a profound experience with Bigfoot on the road, a road she won't drive anymore. But she would not go on camera and talk about it. But she talked very clearly about it at the lunch we were having. Finally, I did find somebody who was an interesting talker, and he told stories of his own experience and a few other people who come to him and tell him what was going on, experience-wise. But Tim Anderson's the name of the ex-law enforcement officer. He had one interesting experience. He said that there's always military activity going on in the valley and around Dulce. Black helicopters, as he said, big C-37 transports, flying in and out of the valley all the time.
Yeah.
People full ops gear driving through. And one night, once was speeding through, and he stopped it. It was a van, and there were two guys in full op gear. And like a good officer, he looked around and looked in the back of the van, and he said there was a cage there. And the soldier that was driving said, "Let us go. Don't talk about this." And he never did until he did the interview. But I asked him what was in the cage, and he wouldn't tell me.
He wouldn't tell you.
No.
So it's left to your imagination, which doesn't take too much of a stretch of the imagination to come up with some answers to that question.
But, why in the world would there be anybody in full ops gear driving down the road? And if you look where Dulce is, it's really isolated. There's nothing around there. There's no reason for anybody to be there.
Yeah.
You'd have to make a big point to get there. And then, they have a small casino and that's it for that place. It's very poor. So, there's no reason there to have all that going on. So anyhow, that was fascinating. So my next stage is I wanted to find other spots that were active, paranormal, call them hotspots. That's what I'm into these days, that there are multiple of these. Have you heard of that?
I'm sorry, I must admit. Yeah, you cut out a little bit there. Did I hear of what?
I asked you if you heard about paranormal hotspots.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, I know a lot of paranormal hotspots, but is there something specific that's defined as a paranormal hotspot?
Well, I'm making this up. This is my idea.
Oh, okay.
But there are these places. Well, I probably stole it from somebody I was talking to. But there are these places where over a period of time, usually involving one or two people that are geographically centered in this area, that a variety of paranormal events occur, ranging from Bigfoot to ghosts to, I forget what is it. You get these voice recordings, EFPs?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, EVPs.
EVPs, yes.
Yep.
Electronic voice. Okay. All manner of paranormal activity will show up for a period of time in a fairly defined geographic area. And I've been putting feelers out. If I ever get freed up to go back to work, I'd like to do a series investigating them. And they seem to be centered around one or two very ordinary people that were, who knows why, they were kind of chosen for this, to witness it.
When you,
I go to two of them.
Yeah,
two of them in the movie.
Okay.
But go ahead.
No, I was going to start to ask about what if there's a connection between Bigfoot and aliens. If Bigfoot is alien in origination or origin, what is the point? Is Bigfoot a tool of what we know as the traditional aliens that we? If you were to say, tell me what it looks like, I'd give you a description of a gray or something. Or have we been misdescribing these aliens the whole time, and Bigfoot is actually the creature that we know as an alien?
That's an interesting question because shape-shifting seems to be one of their characteristics. That, being Bigfoot may be just one way something is appearing to you. My thought on aliens in general is that there's probably no way we can, you can have one on your radio show that their framework for information processing is probably totally different than ours. I mean, our framework is pretty much based on what might be called the need to exist. So much of language of purpose and what's it all about all has to do with the fact, that we die. And we know we die. And we have this strong biological impulse to stay alive. But if you don't have that, then talking about, purposes and meanings maybe not make any sense at all. That's kind of where I'm leaning. So when people have these contact experiences, I think they're kind of like right now you can picture somebody in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you wherever you're sitting, you can place them in your visual field and sort of see them there, right?
Sure.
So it's quite possible that in some way when they show up, it's sort of like what you just did.
Okay.
But this contact is used every time they have a contact. It's like, oh my God, there was a total surprise. It's almost never like I went hunting, trailing, going, then all of a sudden heard a little crack, and I went further, and then I saw the Bigfoot. Even if they're out looking, when it shows up, it's a total surprise. So the time and place is chosen by whatever they are. And it's not clear. For example, when the way we, through our senses, see the world, as you probably have heard, is totally made up by our brain.
Mm-hmm.
That, there's really nothing like green in the way we see green, or probably even chairs, because this is just the way our brain has made us look at these things. And it's probably and so it wouldn't be hard to imagine the creatures we are to have something like a portal open up and they would give us a kind of experience which would be counted as paranormal or paraphysical.
Are they
in some sense they're the same.
Are they messing with us, Ron? Why do that? Why put those images in our heads? Why give us a brief glimpse of an encounter but not a full encounter? Is the joke on us?
Seems to be. Just because we're asking that damn question, huh?
Why
are they doing this?
We dedicate whole radio and television and movies to shows and movies to it. As you start to collect these ideas and particularly working with the Native Americans, Native Americans have stories that span generations of encountering these beasts. Do they often have a companion story that talks about an alien encounter that might go along with their Sasquatch-type encounters?
Well, the only ones I talked to extensively were the Apaches.
Okay.
And they didn't really seem to be interested in relating their encounters back to their legends. If they have legends. I don't know if the Apaches do or not.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was all very recent stuff.
Okay.
And they all know that stuff is going on there because they talk to each other. So
sure,
you kind of expect it.
Yeah, you mentioned shape-shifting. Now, did you have a personal encounter or personally eyewitness something of a shape-shifting nature?
I had an experience where I was driving down a road, a divided road, and from an adjacent road, gravel road, to merge with the lane going the other way, a fairly large wolf-like creature emerged out of nowhere. Was about the size of a horse. It was white. I looked at it and I saw it I knew in some sense it was conscious. It turned around, took off, and went back down and disappeared. How's that?
That's pretty good. Yeah. When we talk about shapeshifters, we also talk about things that are a little more nefarious, or in some cases, there's even some evil connections to it. When we talk about things like werewolves or other dogmen or some of these creatures that other folks have said they've seen shapeshift, are they connected to this phenomena as well, or is that something different from what your research has told you?
You mean like skinwalkers?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, interesting. Tim Anderson, the police officer, said in his youth he saw one up in a tree, and he shot an arrow through it and then chased it for a while. So the question of these nightmare creatures like Dracula and werewolves,
mm-hmm.
they could very well have had their origin in some sort of experience, paranormal experience. But then, the legend around them, something else, right?
Yeah.
No, nobody's seen a werewolf lately.
Right.
Unless you go to Forks, and then they're all teenagers. So, yeah, these are legends. These are all legends. I don't know what to make of the skinwalker one.
Yeah.
It seems like the most recent, consistent one that permeates, native culture. And there was that property, with skinwalkers on it in Utah, Skinwalker Ranch. There's been a couple docs on that.
Yeah, well, I haven't watched it yet, but there's a television series now that's experimenting and exploring the phenomena of Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay, yeah, well, you get one of these things, you can get money to do something about it.
Exactly. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you've worked with other filmmakers, and obviously you've talked to a lot of people in the process of writing the book or the film and making the film. Do you have other filmmakers that have actually had some of these experiences that refuse to either admit it or do anything about it?
Not really. I mean, by and large, that hasn't been my crowd most of my career. But in a way, I never thought to ask anybody about it either, what they thought or if they had experiences. It was like Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah,
that people are familiar with. But wow, I mean, most of my career, I never would have asked a wandering cameraman what kind of experiences he might have had. But I was never around on any of these paranormal shoots. Doug Hychek, you know who he is?
I don't.
He started this whole journey.
Yeah, I don't.
Monster Quest originally.
Okay.
And he's in the series I did, Chasing Bigfoot. I got to know him. I liked him because, we were kind of kindred producer souls in a way. And so when I finished the movie, I said, well, I want you to take a look at it, see what you think. I said, yeah, I know you're a flesh and blood guy, but anyhow, let me know what you think. He said, wait a minute, I'm not a flesh and blood guy. Like, you're not? Well, I just had to be one for the series. I've had lots of paranormal experiences. I just filmed some orbs And then they broke my camera, and he told me stories, a number of stories that he had that were paranormal. When I interviewed him the first time, he gave no indication. He took it in. In fact, he's got a lab for looking at hairs and stuff like that.
How many people that you went to talk to would tell you stories, but then not want to be filmed and relating their stories? And if you had some of those folks, what was the reasoning? Are they just afraid to be ostracized?
I didn't have any trouble with anybody except the Native Americans.
Okay.
And they're kind of camera shy anyhow, I think. They're very suspicious of white folk like me and my white crew. But, they were nice. I talked to one guy when I was doing another series, and he was a professor, and he asked what else I was doing, and I told him I was doing that series on Bigfoot, and he started to tremble.
Ooh.
And he had an experience when he was a kid, and he spoke about it in public, and he became ostracized and laughed at, and it was a terrible thing for him. And he went back to what happened to him because he spoke out back then. So there's probably a lot of people that have these experiences that just keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when I tell them what I'm doing, people pipe up, particularly about the strange things they've encountered, ghosts, objects moving around, that sort of stuff. People are eager to talk. Camera's not on, but they'll talk to me.
As you go down this road, do you think that you are going to continue to find more evidence to support this idea, or do you think we found as much as we can find and we're just going to have to kind of use our best educated guess to make determinations?
I think there's more to be found. I'm actually trying to open up a portal on I own 40 acres in the Rocky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
My son-in-law and I are trying to open up a portal. I'll report back to you maybe in a year how it's going.
So what do you have to do? What's the process to try to open a portal?
Well, I was told that you take divining rods. So we had heard from some of our neighbors who have comparable 40s. Hardly anybody lives up there, but it's a place that's just nice to go to. Beautiful scenery. And they said that they had reports of UFOs, and some actually said they saw Bigfoot. So it occurred that there's some possibility there. So when we started looking, the first time we went with my son-in-law, we found the typical tracks that came from nowhere and ended up going nowhere. Which she said, this has some possibility. I couldn't figure out what was going on there, these tracks that were pretty snow. They were in the snow, and they were somewhat old. There's a lot of melting.
Mm-hmm.
But they originated in one spot, which was a giant anthill that had sort of, the sun had melted because of the darker nature of the anthill at Mars. So the footprints started there, or ended there, it's hard to say. My son-in-law tracked the other direction. They went to a tree and disappeared. So that said, this is interesting. Maybe something's going on here. And then one of the things you do is you take divining rods and a sensitive. Do people know what divining rods are?
Yeah, we've talked about them on the program before. Sure.
Yeah. And you ask, is there a portal, and where is the portal?
Mm-hmm.
And we got positive answers. We did one little gifting experiment where you offer objects and see if they'll play and move them or do something or replace it with something else. And we put a feather in a bottle and hid it under a rock that nobody could ever find because, nobody's ever there, but you would have to be kind of crazy to crawl amongst the bushes and pull out a bottle. But the second time we went back, the feather was out of the bottle and sticking in a crevice. And And using divining rods, it pointed us to where the supposed portal is. Now we're investigating.
If you find a portal, if you actually can open this portal, what happens next? Do you expect that you can either travel through it, or Bigfoot or other creatures might come through it?
More like the latter. That there will be an increase in paranormal activity.
I see.
Like if you stay overnight or even during the day, people will start experiencing stuff. And, they might play with you.
You don't think any of this is dangerous, do you, Ron?
It's not my gut feeling. Although, if you're mentally unstable, it might, screw you up in some way.
Well, I think there's an aspect to it that it could screw anybody up, but whether it's malicious or not is a different story. And, I had said jokingly before, are they just playing with us? I guess we have to assume if they aren't malicious, then they are just playing with us. Maybe it's fun.
By definition, they got to be smarter than us, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Because we haven't even gotten off the planet yet.
That's
made any contact with it. And, all our sciences say our intuitions are full of shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear the strange stuff about quantum mechanics. It makes no sense.
Right.
Doesn't. Or relativity that.
So what's next in your quest here? What's next? What's next for you? Are you going to continue to write about this phenomenon with more evidence, or are you going to make a follow-up film? I know that you don't sit still for very long. So is the Portal project something that you're hoping to write about someday?
I could write. I'm making notes now. I've been advised to do that, as we all are working on it. Mm-hmm. But I would like to do a series investigating these other paranormal hotspots in a way that's devoted to them, and see if I could come up with some pattern. And I know of some. Maybe if you know of one, let me know.
Okay.
So you got to have probably Bigfoot sightings or other Bigfoot-like creature sightings, something to do with alien presence, craft, something like that. Possibly some ghost activity, past or present. And if you were to do some recordings, those recordings that record voices, you'd pick something up. It'd be very, very active. It's been going on for some time, and I think, if I were to go there and hang out and film for a while and get a sense of what's going on and the kind of people that are been having these experiences, we'll probably get something. Because I asked one person who was very knowledgeable about this when I had that experience with that wolf-type creature. I said, what do you think it means? He said, I think it means they're happy with what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's encouraging.
So I'd like to get a series together. But, this is not a time to pitch anything to anybody.
No, it's not.
Nobody's making any decisions.
No, nobody's doing anything. Everybody's kind of like deer in headlights right now. So the film was released just a couple months ago. It's called The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, and it's on Amazon Prime, right? Anybody who's got Amazon Prime can watch it right away, or you can go there, and I'm sure it's a pay-per-view kind of thing.
Yeah, you could rent it or download it. Yeah, for sure.
And when the book,
$50, something like that.
And the book
Pretty
is
cheap.
And the book is still available, right?
Yeah, on Amazon again, or Barnes and Noble.
If you had to offer somebody who was a flesh and blooder for Bigfoot, said, no, this is a ape-like creature, maybe the missing link or whatever, whatever the 100 stories are, and you're not going to be able to convince me otherwise, how would you, in a couple sentences, try to change their mind?
Well, first of all, I'd want to find out if they had an experience, a contact experience with a Bigfoot.
Right.
A lot of researchers who make these arguments haven't had any experiences.
That's true.
if they haven't had any, I would say, why haven't you had any experiences running around like this? What's going on? What's your problem? And see if they could justify all the time they spent with no results. And if they had an experience, I'd want to delve into asking what it was like for them and why that caused them to, to start researching Bigfoot. And then maybe the conversation, depending upon the experience, it might be able to say, here's something that's quite unusual about your experience. You think that would happen with a gorilla? Something like that.
Right. Good. Well, we're out of time, Ron, but it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I love to hear your perspective on all of this. Promise me that if you make any progress or have any new work, what is related to the Portal project or anything you're doing, you let us know, because we'd love to have you back on.
I would, and if anybody in your audience could, I don't know if they can connect with you or not, but if they have any portals they know about, I'd like to know.
Okay, I'll post that on our social media. They can contact us if they have any information like that, and I'll forward it to you.
Beyond Reality Paranormal is hosted by J.V. Johnson and produced by Orion Palmer and Slick Eddie Edwards. Like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please consider supporting the program either through your podcast platform, click on the link in the description, or on Patreon at Joha Productions. If you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Paranormal, or you have a recommendation for a guest, contact our producer, Slick Eddie Edwards. Eddie is spelled with a Y at slickeddieedwards@gmail.com.